So there's a verse by Master Chandrakirti in the introduction to the Middle Way that says the intention of it, the meaning of it is that if the self or the person and the aggregates were identical, or if they're different, then it would be impossible to establish them as the appropriator and that which is appropriated. So the self or the person is that which takes up the aggregates, and so it's the agent which takes up the aggregates. If the self and the aggregates, the appropriator and that which is appropriated, were identical by means of intrinsic nature, then one would be able to establish them as as the appropriator and that which is appropriated for the reasons that we've discussed previously. If they were completely identical, then there would be no way to distinguish them. If they were identical by means of their own intrinsic nature, then it would be impossible to distinguish them in any way whatsoever, and all of the faults that we've discussed previously would entail. The same thing applies in the case of if the self and the aggregates were different in a way that was intrinsic to them. If the self was intrinsically different than the aggregates, then it would be such that it would have no relationship with the aggregates, and lacking any kind of relationship, it would be impossible again to posit them, posit the self or the I or person as the appropriator, that which takes up the appropriated aggregates.
Oh yeah. 간지 제법 매제 내매바 대지다게 남의 방에 비실가나 다 되게 당신지 주비 찍이나 내 제법 버지도 주밖에 여와요. 아니 여와 인상 당신지 주비 찍대 찍게 동바체. 그러와 대지 풍부 내신 당매대 풍부마도 대생 무주지 전에 가사송과 나신 전에 다보라자 유튜브 현이나 다대이나 아니 풍부송화라 마되바 아니 다송화지 요구 그래. 가사시와 나신이 전에 아니 가서를 풍부송화라 마되바 아니 가와송도 여바 나신이 전에 안 풍부송화라 마되바 다송도 여바 고고래 템매배 아니 다다 풍부라자 유튜브 현이와 말이.
So likewise, so if the self as that which appropriates, and the aggregates as that which is taken up or appropriated by the self, if they were absolutely identical, such that if the self was identical by means of its own intrinsic nature with the aggregates, then there would be no way to distinguish them, and all of the faults that we've mentioned above of the self becoming plural or the aggregates becoming singular, all of these different kinds of faults would obtain. And in brief, one would be unable to establish any kind of relationship of agent and object of action of that agent. The self as the agent takes the object of its actions, the aggregates and appropriates them. So. If the self was absolutely identical with the aggregates, then the faults that have been mentioned would obtain. Likewise, if the self was absolutely or intrinsically different than the aggregates, as mentioned, there would be no kind of relationship, and all of the faults that we've discussed previously also on that side of it would obtain as well. There would be one would not be able to establish any kind of relationship between them as agent and object of that agent.
Oh yeah, that data 풍부니 오데 라시 유튜브 찍도 직당 현도 매배 랑산 주주비 현도 매바 인장 다 되어라. 단다 네 가서 가서래 나를 충을 가서 아니 내시 그 잡아대 만도 마송바 마도 아니 대들라 지당 아니 가서를 따라하신지 주가 가야 되라 아니 남든 그리 봐시 가라 아니 땡땡바 다 풍부를 땡바 라신지 주와당 풍부 달라 땡바 라신지 주 라신지 매바당 나다 풍부인 나 풍부다 땡바다 풍부 다 달라 땡바 라신지 땡바 라신지 매바 그와 어디니 이브라신지 매바 제가 다 맞추는 거래 직당 가서 직당 타자당 아니 펜진 땜바 땜바 수직 아니 땜비 수직체 근데 제가 아니 가사기 풍부 써박이 이 가사 많이 봐 어두시 자기가 다 여인장 다다 풍부들 라신지 주비 현이나 재미 텐션이 제용 거래 재미 텐션이 현이나 아니 다 풍부를 땜바다 풍부다가 땜바게 땜바라시 주어야 用没写把一张，但是等把没得被捐越把因呗，原则集体的，是吧？
So if it was the case that the self or the person was established by means of its own intrinsic identity, then it would be impossible to have the sort of relationship with the aggregates that has been mentioned, with the self or person operating as the agent, and the aggregates being the object which is appropriated or taken up by that agent, the self. If the self had that kind of intrinsic identity. Similarly, and the way it's been explained here in the intermediate stages of the path, in terms of establishing the 4 essential points as we've gone over it, is done in terms of this analysis in terms of the self or person and the aggregates being either identical or being different by means of intrinsic nature. If they were intrinsically identical or intrinsically different, then the sorts of faults that we've discussed previously would obtain. The same thing applies. There are other forms of analysis, other forms of reasoning that one can employ to establish the same thing, that the self is devoid of intrinsic nature, a person or self is devoid of intrinsic nature, is devoid of intrinsic identity. Another type of reasoning is looking at the aggregates as the base, and the self as, or a person as that which depends upon that base. And if one does that kind of reasoning, one also obtains this, similar kinds of unacceptable consequences as were previously established in the identity and difference form of this kind of reasoning.
Oh yeah, 通过大约马云大那样，通过天呢原民康熙的，现在人呢。 大把敌军呢，先没提起铁队对多保护，所以他敌军在的结果，他就这样讲嘛是吧？他提一些接了，两把让信息主吧，拿彭博党两把党，彭博大党让信息主，两把让信息主，前一呢，连主得了，我太太被点不正主激党，现在了拿点是吧党，拿彭博党点是要给，我太太被正主激党，我太安尼。 我这边等住几个议员呗，我太太被等住的，让咱去准备现银那你这没填现用过的。我这边等住的，让先去准备等住银那你太太在每个集体做过的。人家集党太太了，黄土捐要把提起打彭博党，安尼担保样，我让先去出马的。 打彭博电把上信息没做巴是，电喷准电比处理也比打彭博的把彭博打到电把是，打彭博的电把彭博打到电把得了，电住你我太太被电住，现在了拿电是吧？没让你看啥了彭博电是吧？但是我太太被电住，那你这没填写的，你。 这没填写，被电最太个嘛的，是让他去准备。俺那我太太被电最在了，这没填写，是吧？太个嘛的是。但我这边电最那样，他在对面个经过的，光都写吧个，记他在了单位，年娃的得了就把印章，俺那电没出一样，电把让些就要嘛是。
电把让些嘛。
电把，喷准电把。
喷准电把。喷准电把，Yeah, and then also it's the same thing if one takes the composite of the aggregates, a sort of configuration of all of the aggregates, and one analyzes the relationship between the self or the person, the self and the aggregates in terms of that. If one takes the composite configuration of the aggregates, and one examines whether or not the self is intrinsically identical with that configured collection of the aggregates, or if it's intrinsically different from that configured collection of the aggregates. It's the same sort of faults obtain as were mentioned above. Then, likewise, if one looks at it in terms of mutual dependence, if the self or the person were intrinsically, had its own intrinsic identity, or it possessed a kind of intrinsic nature, then it would be impossible for it to have a dependent relationship with the aggregates, which are its basis. The self or the I, as we've said, is designated in dependence upon its basis of designation, that is the aggregates. So if the self was had intrinsic identity, it would be impossible for it to have that kind of dependent relationship, and vice versa. The aggregates as the base for the self, for the designation of the self. If the self, again, was intrinsically existent or existed by means of its own intrinsic identity, then it could not, the aggregates could not serve as a base for that identity or that designation.
Oh yeah, that didn't. 가서 디 덴바라시 주와데 가체 아니 소바라시 주와 아니 초바 풍부 초바 가상 가인 바 풍부 초바 가상 그 다시 이제 다시 아니 다시这个말이 있어. 되니听了입 안에 가서 입 가사도 되와 대한민국에 요 메디어바디 입대 수전을 요아래 만도 가사를 용하를 요아 말이지 입신나지 수전을 되지 있어야지 오 되게 입 수전을 요바를 만도 가사를 요아 매바 인사 입이라신지 입 가사도 되와 대야 가체 그러나 너나 리바 대다기 아니 오 가사라신지 주와 까니 대리바기 아니 다기와라신지 주와야 까디 오 간지 제보 매제 레 매바 대지 다기 다음에 봐요 미 대지 다당 다기 동다신 세계가 다당 다기 원니가 라신지 주배 동바 아니 동바 된라 봐 동다신 된자위 아니 동바티 동니데 공바 권내 콘도 폐지 아니 탑지 차자 준비 신병권에 권배 아니 난조바디 아니 님보다 시지리바를 초와디 그래 세다도 심발.
So then, the same kind of analysis can be applied to if one takes the aggregates as like a possession of the self, something that the self possesses, and the self as the possessor of the aggregates. One can apply if the self existed intrinsically as the possessor of the aggregates. If being a possessor was established by means of the intrinsic identity or intrinsic nature of the self or person, then actually the relationship of possession of the aggregates would also be undemonstrable and actually illogical, would not obtain. And then similarly, one can talk about like the shape of the body, for example, the shape of the physical aggregate, and we can demonstrate that that's not the that's also not the I or self. And if the self exists by means of intrinsic identity or its intrinsic nature, there would be no way to establish a relationship between the shape of the body or the form of the body and the self or I, which is designated upon that. So in all of these various forms of reasoning, one arrives at the same point that although the I or the self, the person, is designated in dependence upon its basis of designation, the aggregates, it's neither intrinsically identical with them, nor is it intrinsically different from the aggregates. So once one has come to understand that that meaning of emptiness, then initially understanding it correctly, then applying that in meditation practice such that one conditions oneself to seeing it in that way over and over again. Eventually one comes to directly know this, directly realize this, and then by means of that direct realization of emptiness, as it's been explained, then the mental afflictions and the all of the karma, etc., that are created by the by the agency of the mental afflictions are eliminated, ceased, and then he concludes that verse. Chandrakirti says, then by that means, by seeing the emptiness in that way, the yogi or yogini is liberated.
Oh yeah, that did kansa ke tame tala payadi. That did in bari. Rwa that repe namyong ki riba la tene ane kansa rasin ji chua ka jang ane kansa kim me chwa ane tanya tamdo ane o 가수도 탄탄해 가서 가사게 자와치지 가수래 내서보다 안데 운영하고 자와치도 자와치바데 어디 스타투스에 가서 티니 도마 지된디 넘버 뒤지 두줄 매매지 남자 매바 지된 일하다 랑게 알았다나 도바인 세가라 가사셔야지 대코난이도 아요 말에서 티니 좀 타녀 도양 아니 가소래 대관나요 타녀 도양 아니 다들 자유에서는 해봐지요 말에 티니 좀 마치네도 넘버 딘지 두줄 매매지 넘버 뒤다 가서 대진 직단 타대당 편제 땡땡바당 초잠다 소비 입전에 뒤도 시작이어와 어떻게 자연 많이 나야 아니 매도 미주바 아니 요즘 매대 나자 매바직 때 일하니 랑게야라 때나 도바인 세가라 풍부 초점라 때네 아니 가사데 민장 다유섬도 여바래 쓰거래 민장 다유섬도 여바래
민경 다유섬도. So then when we do this kind of analysis, and in the verse there's 7 kinds of analysis that one can do in looking at the way the person relates to its basis of designation, the collection of the aggregates, as said above, either identical or different, or as being dependent upon the base intrinsically, having that kind of intrinsic identity, or possessing it, or having a relationship to the components in a unintegrated fashion, or the components as they're all put together, or the shape and form of the body, or that sort of, regardless of all of these different forms of analysis, one arrives at a negation of the existence of the self or person existing intrinsically. The person does not exist intrinsically by means of its own intrinsic identity. Nevertheless, it is validly, correctly designated upon its basis of designation, so which is the collection of the aggregates. So the what is left over then, when one does the analysis, and what one arrives at is a simple negation, the absence or lack of a intrinsically existing self or person. Yet that does not entail the non-existence of the self or person. Rather, as a sort of what's left over, after one comes out of doing the analysis and eliminating the intrinsically existing self or person, then what's left over is the conventionally existing self, which is conventionally designated upon its basis of designation. That is, it's a mere, it merely exists as a designation, as a 名称
민장 따위
민당
따위 좀
So just as a mere name or as something which is merely nominally existent, as something that is simply exists in a designated fashion.
오야 다 대연제기 간사게 땡라 바베게 바지 친 다음에 땡라 바바지 친네 단니와 최지 다음에 땡라 바바라 이 유명하다 담보 가자 차라 매장 최전기 와지 다음에 지존이 다 가상한도 얘가 쉬쳐와체 그러와 최지 다음에다 가사게 다음에 니보라 아니 가자라 차라게요 말이 다 최전 강라 땡라 바시 최전되게 내지 아니 다 가소래 지교아래 강사도 다비시 풍보당 원ങ്ങള라우지당 최지 담에서 가라 최세되라 지당 네가지 최세되라 최게게도 다마시와 다마시와당 양치지가든 다라시와 이 저비양간라 다마시 저be 완도 전에 최세되 아니 대스거라 이시라 수순하게 수낭 이시기유라 최제지 세대 어디스거라 이시기유라 최지 날마세도 거야지 아니 나라시 점발아 저희가나 최세대니 최대 가르래서나 아니 최세 아니 가서요 나송근에서 미동아 아니 점발 챙게 아니 개와 지기 미게 접은 거 치름라 지우충이 최세로 아니 코에내서 내년이 샤완제 지원 거 코에내서 민원와 아니 zembar 챙게 나와서 못해라 지우증기 최세로 시시 탐 민원와 zembar 챙게인데 아니 지우충 이제당 장주기 있으면 순제 장주 돈이도 비셔라 순제 생각되라 아니 탄이스 밀롱과 생각지 봐라 티바치비 최세하고 최그렇게도 루시 교 충의 교 등의 교 침비 최세대 최대 다른 밀롱과 스시 오답도 쓰는 거야 그러와 다지 최세 달마세 가라 이식 유도집에 최대라 풍보단의 계제다 감정근의 탐지 뒤세야 나서잖아요 어떻게 이식 유도집이
So then at the end of that, I neglected to translate one crucial point, is that even though this I or self is merely nominally existent, it only exists as a mere name. Nevertheless, even existing in that way without even a single particle of intrinsic existence, it's nevertheless able to function within causal relationships, acting as the agent that accumulates karma and that experiences the results subsequently. Now, this leads into the second subdivision here, which is establishing the selflessness of phenomena. When we speak of the word, the term here in Sanskrit is called dharma, and this word dharma it was translated into Tibetan as chu, and it has multiple connotations. The one connotation entails that one translated as something like phenomena. Here, phenomena referring to things like the aggregates, the elements, the sense fields, perceptual fields, and so forth. Or fundamentally, it's something which operates such that it is able to be cognized by the intellect here. Here, the so-called mental awareness, or maybe intellect, is able to know things, take phenomena as its objects. So in that case, it's referring, that connotation of dharma is as phenomena refers to all of the kinds of things that can be understood with by the mind. Then the another connotation of the same word, dharma, is it derives from the Sanskrit root, which means to hold, dhara. And that root means to hold something, and it can mean to hold something up. And so in that case, the dharma is something like religious practice, or some sort of practice, spiritual practices that enable one to hold oneself from falling into some sort of extreme situation. So, for example, there's different levels of this dharma in the second sense of that which preserves you or holds you from falling into a bad state of existence. In the initial, there's the dharma as it applies to a person of lesser scope, smaller scope. And for such a person, then the dharma is observing the proper kinds of behavior, especially the avoidance of the 10 kinds of non-virtuous actions. And that dharma, avoiding the 10 kinds of non-virtuous actions and engaging in things like charity and so forth, then preserve you from, or hold you up from, falling into the lower realms of existence. Then in the intermediate type of dharma, for people that are of intermediate scope, they engage in practices that enable them to eventually not fall into existence, in samsaric existence in any way whatsoever. So they have to engage in the 3 kinds of higher trainings of ethical conduct, meditative concentration, and wisdom. Then there's the highest kind of dharma, the dharma of the great vehicle, which is like the development of bodhicitta, etc., and then the practices that come out of after you've developed bodhicitta, the sorts of the practice of the 6 perfections and so forth. Those practices prevent one from falling into the extreme of a kind of nirvana, which prevents one from helping other sentient beings and enabling them to achieve liberation.
Oh yeah. That chara mejang, kansa sui damela chara mejang. Kansa don da bi shi se gana. Da kansa ke dashi de la songwa re. Ra. Le da nyomong ge xiawang jan du chuba mu, le da nyom xiawang du chuba mu, lian yuan ji kang wen na kang. Tela den na ko wen ne su sa ba mu, lung wa che ba na kansa se ni. Da xie de le yo jang ge yu ji ha re. Wa, wo ten de we kansa don da bi shi ani pong bong a dang. 蓬勃些话呢，原来他妈蓬勃，蹦的结果这几天谁干了？原来他妈蓬勃呢，蓬勃，我听着也蓬勃爱当，所以看了说话给看出当，然后看些话呢，人来做过的，啊，蹦的结果这几天，人，哦，人家所以看些的，看明朝没完明朝话些用的话哦。 come true down. Miso, any miso jeje la so vaki, jeje sewane, jeje chepana. Ah, jeje segana. Miso jeje true la so vaki, so when it che yin la. That then the che yin la. Che dame dan la basaki si che di yin la. Te da, rangong all tribi. 我然后我准备让信息动吧呢，那他然后我也准备让信息动吧噻，然后我准备呢，他先看了呀，马对吧，让我动吧听呢，呢，我去他给打没的，是没了说吧，他给打没的，嗯。
So here, what is principally being discussed in the case of the selflessness of phenomena is it encompasses actually all of the both senses of dharma, but here the analysis is done in terms of the first sense of dharma as phenomena. So here the text begins by saying that although there's no difference in terms of subtlety and coarseness with respect to the object of negation, in accordance with in accordance with the basis, the thing which possesses the property of self or selflessness, then the two kinds of selflessness are distinguished: the selflessness of persons that we've already discussed, and then now this selflessness of phenomena. So persons, selflessness itself, there's no difference in terms of the gradation or the quality of that selflessness, but the base upon which that selflessness is established has some difference, and thus there's the selflessness of persons, the selflessness of phenomena. So, and then the way in which one distinguishes the two kinds of selflessness in accordance with that difference in terms of the base which possesses that property of selflessness. It starts off by saying that the basis for the designation of a person, and here the word person in Tibetan is gangzak, and that has is broken, is sort of a way of breaking it into two parts, where the first part means full, and the second part means like falling down, falling down. So this sort of way of analyzing this word is taken as meaning that it's filled with the mental afflictions, or if it's filled with the mental afflictions and negative karma created by those mental afflictions, it's liable to fall down into a lower state of existence. And then, so the basis for the designation of that, the person, is the five aggregates. The term aggregate here is explained as meaning, literally it means a heap. The term that is being translated as aggregate means a heap. And so what this is understood as is that it's a collection of various components put together. That's the explanation of aggregate. Then there's the six elements, the elements of the earth element and so forth. Elements are like sometimes translated as basic constituents. The five physical elements, as well as the consciousness as a sort of mental element. And then then there's also six, they're called cognitive spheres, which are here referring to the eye, the visual organ, the auditory organ, and the other organs that enable one to cognize external objects, and also the mental organ, which enables one to cognize things like ideas. So these six organs, all of these are dharmas or phenomena, and these. The fact that they are empty of having a nature which is established by means of its own character is the selflessness of these, their absence of self, the absence of self of these phenomena.
Oh yeah, Taniwa Tetan baby Chula, or Cherashima Batella baby Chula, Tanga Shabaki, Ani Kasariba Kapene. Oh, Jita, then be to Rashi to be Jita to Makaru the Tower to Benago. Ani Ngar Shabi Riba Kapen and Goba Tang. Ngar Mashabi Riba Shenju Goba Yiche. Tambo. Tambo ani ngar shabi riba kapena te da 풍보다 감당 제제지 오버 니래 풍보다 감당 제제지 오버 라 니래 다 수전중 오버다 수전지 대라 풍보다 감당 제제 오버라 수전지 오버당 안에 수전 많이 많이 연구와你我的人首先就我首先咱们呢下了所谓确实恰当确实恰当当안에 차장기 차남당 안에 차장 안에 가서래 초지 차단제비 차장이당 나들라 시와 참여 가서 두전 참여 가고 하라 두전 참여 봐 가서래 수단 수전의 수전 마인 바 탐제라 차제인 바도 좀네 봐首先就看那让给下了所谓确实首先咱们让给下了所谓确南当恰南当恰见你当首先的恰下当确实恰当那你恰见你当希望咱们让给改进我这了所谓推荐恰改进我这个安尼推荐恰南当恰见我的恰见你我恰当恰见你我的首先马英把个恰当恰见你我的我你就准备适当他在卡中出大呢是吧当我你就准备恰当恰见卡中在那我你就准备就都中呢空的下边日吧给恰当恰见他在没也没几就就吧给日吧是吧我你就他在都中呢안에 차다 차제 때문에 대셔도 줘야 그리고 버텔라 때네 안에 나를 집에 지다 때다 그리고 버텔라 때네 안에 차다 차제 수전 마인 바다 시와라 소바 차다 수전 마인 차다 차제 되다 안에 라시지 줘가 그 말에 나 집에 버텔
So then with respect to how to establish that selflessness of phenomena, there's two. The way in which one does that has two different parts. One, by negating the self, by negating the self of phenomena by means of applying the reasons that have been explained previously. One takes the reasoning that's been explained above, that is, that in the case of the self or the person and the aggregates, if the self or person was intrinsically identical with the aggregates, then all of those faults would obtain. Likewise, if the self or person was intrinsically different than the aggregates, all of the problems would obtain. The same reasoning can be applied to other phenomena, and then there will be also other kinds of reasoning which have not previously been explained to negate the self of phenomena. Now, with regard to the first of these, among the aggregates, the elements, and the cognitive spheres, among them those that are functional things, there are two kinds of these aggregates, elements, and cognitive spheres that are functional things. That is, those that are physical, and then there's those that are non-physical or mental in nature. With regard to the physical ones, these all have parts. That is, if a physical thing necessarily has a east. From its own point of view perspective, there's an east of it, west, the north, south, up and down, etc. And then, so it has those kinds of parts. And then it has the thing itself, which consists of those parts, those two. So all of these physical things, and one can also one can likewise apply the same kind of reasoning to non-physical, mental sorts of things. They are also composed of parts. So therefore, they have parts as well, and one can, when one is analyzing the relationship between the thing that possesses the parts and the parts, if the thing possessing the parts was established by means of its own intrinsic nature or its own intrinsic identity, then it would be absolutely identical with the parts that it would either be absolutely identical with the parts that comprise it, or it would be absolutely separate from the parts that make it up. And in both cases, then, the same kind of fallacies that were discussed above would obtain.
Oh yeah. Da ya ti ba che she wa ta da tu ta na kwa pa yin de da ka san ye ge do du ba ki ane do du ba na so na che chi da che che da ki ti she ni xie wa ti xie gun la le cha cha o da ki du she da ra xin ji tu na da pong bo yin wo de ra xin ji ji be ji da ta da ka rong de chu gu de te da na kong du xie ba ki gyun te da yue be ane da ra xin ji me ba ya la pe ba ki 균전데 아니 다기 론자자기 주리 아니 미소 미소 아니 풍보다 감당 제자라 소와 대다장 아니 라신 주비 가소래 제제 감당 소와 대다장 다 대라 가소래 대다장 아니 랑기 차단 차전이오데 라신 주비 직도 예나 차단 차전이오데 이미 직도 조그래 라신 주비 타대 있는 재미 텐션도 조고 와데 아니 다 다진기 다기 리바데 다기 와라 자네 아니 다기 tin도 또 받다나 받다 선거를 와 기타 주제 다기 티신이 시와 티시 끊어 뢰자차
다기 어디
다기 와 미소
mix. So this it was. So this was explained as we've already mentioned this verse here, which explains the basic procedure, what's happening here, where it says. Just as you understand the idea of a self, one should apply one's mind to everything else like that. So here it's saying that just as we've done the kind of analysis of the relationship between the person or the self and the aggregates, which are utilized by the self or person, that is the self or person is the utilizer, the agent that utilizes, and the aggregates are that which is utilized by the or appropriated, one could say, by the self or person. So so when it says one should apply one's mind to all other things in the same way, this means that you take something like if you just take the visual organ itself, the visual organ itself, as this is one of the things upon which the self is designated. One of the portion of it's one of the cognitive spheres upon which the self is designated. So in that sense, it's of the self. It's a thing which is of the self, or it's the self's thing. So in that sense, when we're investigating the establishing the selflessness of phenomena, we would take something like the visual organ and say if it's composed of parts, and if it was established by means of its own intrinsic nature or by means of its own intrinsic identity, then it would have to be either indivisibly identical with the parts, or it would be something which is other than the other or apart from those parts, such that it would have no kind of relationship of dependence at all.
Oh yeah, that's it. Riba Shenji, Kababa Mayimba, Marshabi, Riba Shenji, Mashabi, Mashabi, Riba Shenji, Kabatella. Then you get Dense Dambatang, Tada Ribangame, Ribanga Matende, Chitu Riba, Chaja Riba Tigi, Anne Deme, 디마체 때문에 된주 이 유변하네 다 담보 된중 그때 담바텔라 된중 그때 그 콩고 바테 간데레서나 달로지 제주시 너희 가서 강남 된진 저와 총 치다난 그 최친이바 강여바 탐제 안에 된진 저와 중화래 된진 저와 중화 세대라 이거요 말 규제를 때내 지시 준비 된진 지당 야네 가서 안에 가서 들을 잠지 된지 이체 와 어디 강남 된진 저와 중 강남 된진 저와 중이 최인바테 규제를 개바 이날에 편주 때내 주바 이날에 된지 된지 태남 다显了对吧규제显了라바 브라 레바 아니 显了라 레바 뭐显了对吧인장 아니 라원 용어 매바다 원이지 매바다 显了라 말라비 원이지 와 말이 세더라 태난 원이지 매 야.
So then we now shift into looking at the way of negating the self of phenomena in a way in which it has not been previously explained, applying a different kind of reasoning to a reasoning which hasn't been previously explained in order to negate the self of phenomena. So this has two parts to it. The first is a presentation of the reason of dependent origination, where dependent origination functions as the reason that enables one to negate the self of persons. And then using that sort of reasoning of dependent origination, as well as the former one, which has already been explained, that is the things being devoid of being, things being devoid of being intrinsically identical or intrinsically different from things that they're related to, then that kind of form, both with dependent origination as the reason, as well as the absence of absolute identity or absolute difference, one is also able to, the way in which one establishes that uncreated things also are unreal. Are unreal. So the first of these has multiple parts, but first the source text for this is presented, and then so here, with respect to the reason of dependent origination, the sutra which was requested by Sagaramati, there's two lines quoted from that, which says that things, whatever arises dependently, those are all devoid of intrinsic existence. So when it says whatever arises dependently, it means this refers to all phenomena, whether they're external phenomena or in the outer world, or internal phenomena within oneself. All of these, whatever they are, they arise which arise dependently. Here, arising dependently can be interpreted in two ways. One, you can take this arising dependently or dependent origination in the sense of causal relationships, that things that arise from causes and conditions arise in dependence upon those causes and conditions. Or also one can take dependent origination in the sense of mutual dependence, where something is related to something else such that they depend upon each other. They're mutually dependent for their existence. Those two levels of dependent origination. All these things which arise dependently in those ways, those are do not exist by intrinsic nature. Ngoniki me.
Ngoniki me. Or then Tenji Juma Chubi Che Tenam. Ngoniki me said, Shella Ra Malebak, Ngoniki, Yamaris. 然后我又把马的，可举荐先了对吧？举荐先了结巴印章，安尼先了让马让来吧的马多，先了让马来吧让，先了马对比我你就要马的。
So when it says they don't exist by means of intrinsic nature, here, or even one could say they don't exist by nature. Here, what the nature which is being rejected is a kind of autonomy. That is a sort of autonomy which would entail that the thing doesn't depend upon something else. That if the thing was autonomous, naturally autonomous in this way, then it would be such that it would not, it could not have a relation of dependence on something else. Either of the two kinds of dependencies that have been mentioned previously, that is dependence upon causes and conditions for its arising, or dependence in the sense of depending upon or being contingent upon the existence of something else.
Oh yeah, 这等于个大意思。遇见现了，等着中央，让怎样呢？俺那看是对着，看是每个大伙咱们就出不去，因为军战机，俺那看是让星期出发，现在让马来边，我要把这挂吧，让星期出发挂吧，啥玩意送行是。这些都，大绿叫马这个学多了，可是俺说他忙不成的嘞，是吧？康熙建了叫我天马街，去那个去，我康熙遇见先了叫我天，俺那天马街说的，但那马街为就叫马英不钱，你那马建了叫我的马街说的，但那马街完了过来用来完，康熙建了叫我遇见先了叫我的让星期马街把这。康熙建了叫我天马行是，你天了这位我也马应是，他的了这位让行也马应是，这位我也马应是了，别专门这话的七八七啊嘛的，遇见一结巴你看说的对住这边等着天了，你我你就结巴让行就叫我有啊嘛的，天了这位我天了。这个这了我你是叫没，这了这个让是越把没，这了我你是叫没，呀。
So, no. So that this reason of dependent origination, then here the reasoning that because things are contingent upon other things, either in the sense of depending upon causes and conditions for their origination, or in the sense of being contingent in the sense of depending upon other things for their existence. Mutual dependence, that sort of contingent existence, that sense of that reason, that reasoning of dependent origination is taught. Also, in the then it says that by means of this reason of dependent origination, one is able to negate that things are established by nature, by intrinsic existence here. So, and this is clearly stated in the sutra, which was requested by Anavatapta, the Naga king whose name was Anavatapta. And this first two lines of this verse, we've already gone over this previously, mentioned it, but again, here it says that that which arises from conditions is unarisen. Here, one can say that which arises from conditions could mean in the sense of something arising from causes and conditions. Things that arise when the causes and conditions for their arising are met, then they arise. They're not arisen. What that 간식 캔을 키워.
간식 캔을 키워 태매시. 지난 거 간식 아니 규제 현라 키워 태. 아니 라신기 맞죠. 라왕 맞죠.
So anything, any internal or external thing which arises from causes and conditions is unarisen. Here, the term unarisen has to be qualified by the specification that they have not arisen by means autonomously. They have not arisen by means of their intrinsic nature. And then the next verse says, next line says, for them, there is no arising by intrinsic nature. And this line actually has two different readings. There's a way to read it as that they don't have any intrinsically existing arising, if you read it that way, or they don't have any kind of arising which is by means of intrinsic existence, as it's given in the printed text that we have here. But either way this is read, it comes down to the same meaning.
Oh yeah, that tell我也是叫咩事干啦，你就见来叫我tell啦，我你让先去叫我咩事，但是我你嘛让先叫我咩，tell了就用我要嘛，tell了我你去叫我咩，这的啦，我嘛的啦，第一次啦。康熙见了对我台上送谁说的？特别是感谢了，见了康了，见了让来看的东西送，现在这的送的，见现了让来把的，俺呢让先去当把的送，对了，康熙见了对我台东西个基本的但我都就见现了对我的让先去当把送，这是的确，是吧？见了让来看的东西送，那些人不可虽然这样，见了让来看的东西送，空谈上没得个给他团他去那个的话，我见了让来看的东西送，听着我的就看的，俺呢让先去当把写话的，然后我去那个我问他先了让马来比当把嘛，让往给当你写话的，俺呢怕有人。
So then the next two lines of this verse say, that which here it says is contingent upon conditions that is said to be empty. There's another way of reading this that says, here it says, or here one could read it as that which depends upon conditions is said to be empty. There's another way of reading this as another reading of this passage, different, a variant reading in the text, which says that that which depends upon conditions is said to be empty, or whatever depends upon conditions is said to be empty. Either way, this reading, as it's given here, is one way to read it. The way it's read in the reading that's presented in the Essence of Good Explanations is the alternative reading, and they both come down to the same intention. So here, and then it says, whatever is dependent upon conditions, that is said to be empty. And one who knows emptiness is vigilant. Is vigilant. So here it means a person who understands emptiness is vigilant.
Oh yeah. 你在这边拿了，看看见了啥来吧，太太让些启动性，送把太来也上边，连都说你继续。然后说完那些钱呢，看看，去那个我看见了哪来吧，听着我的，俺的让心去当心事，送把天来也准备是他，看说的是让心去当做给俺的军政啥哇，认真这我送把天来，俺的当你啥哇动作去，要马的说那种村，看见了的人把天天让心去上去。送把得来也准备，连东村你继续约，我那边东把天喇叭就要买的，连东村你继续约呀。
So then this same statement is referenced in also in the Praise of Dependent Origination by J. Rinpoche, in which he says, you who have taught dependent origination, in the sense that whatever arises from causes and conditions, whatever arises from conditions is empty. That statement, there's meaning or whatever arises from conditions is not arisen by means of its own intrinsic nature. Whatever has arisen from conditions whatever arises from conditions is empty. When you've stated that in the sense that things don't arise by means of their intrinsic nature, you have there's no clear statement of this that has been made.
Oh yeah, te kasore toni to be riba la sa sho de di imba riba kasen sho imba kanke la jewa temme te la jebe ran shi yema ye kala jen la ra de jen la ra le kan de dong shi song te le sa wa den ru me sta toni den dan na la sa chi sa wa den de ge da la den te la den ne me sa wa ji den ru yo me je cho sa de jang ne me na ani den de ge de te tam la den ne ani toni to gre chani o to so imba
So this is also same statement is made by the master of Guntang, who said that you who have said that that which arises by causes and conditions is empty of intrinsic existence. If something arises based upon causes and conditions, it is empty of intrinsic existence. There's no clear statement of this reason of dependent origination. There's no place else that one finds a clear statement that dependent origination establishes the emptiness of things, that the fact that they arise from causes and conditions entails that they're devoid of intrinsic existence. And then based upon that, if one engages in the accumulation of merit and the purification of negativity, one can, by engaging in the
let member chuna ya po chuna ta let member chuna
Denny.
So
to the extent that one understands or to the extent that one's accumulation of merit and purification of negativities goes to the key point, it becomes proper. To that extent, one will be able to understand emptiness.
Oh yeah, Anita Kazare, Kandusun Chiwanam, Tanzin Chiwa Dan Cheva, Tini Kala Drawani, Tawamali Jebugo. Kasore Sana, Ujana Dana Kishi Jeva de Dandrete, Tanzin Dewa Chunga Yimbe, Taranjiba Manjaki. Ani Chudamawa Kansa, Ani Kasore, Tanzin Chunga Yinzang. 아니 강도 탄진 청와 땡쳐봐 라신지 추밤 다도 추바 짐바데 땜바 쳐봐 친구들 군전의 거래를 했잖아 아니다 땡진 유전에 땡내지 땡땡지 강도 청와는 유전의 개발 인장 랑원의 주거래 랑원의 마주나 아니 유전의 개발에 잡아채 두고 말해 전이다 뭐 주다오마 만제 두스도고 알아봐 인장 강도 소매 지와는 탄진 친와 땡쳐봐 탄진 친와 땡바데 다도 주와 땡바 청gen기 유전 땡제테 아니 라시지 매바 캐레베 아니 오마와 탄주와라니 아니 차와 말리 제비고 아니 인생이 차와 말리 봐 제비고 강조 수면 지와나 탄생情况 땡셔봐 제일 캘러 저와니 시리가나 땡증 그 저와 말려 봐 줘봐 그거 저와 말려 줘고
So then the verse following that says that that which lesser masters, when they apprehend it, it gives rise to views of things as being real. This itself enables someone who understands it correctly to be able to cut through all of the elaborations of wrong views. And to achieve freedom from the net which consists of elaborations of wrong views. What this means is that dependent origination, when a person misunderstands it, they assume that because if something arises, for something to arise from causes and conditions, the causes and conditions have to be objectively established. The thing that arises from those causes and conditions necessarily has to be itself objectively established, has to have a kind of autonomy of its own. And thus, using dependent origination as a reason, other philosophers take the evidence of things arising from causes and conditions as entailing that things have a kind of objectively established status. However, if one understands dependent origination correctly as instead entailing the absence of that kind of objectively established status or intrinsic existence or autonomy, then this enables a person who is able to apprehend it in that way. It can serve as a means for cutting through the entirety of the net of conceptual elaborations which consist of erroneous views about things.
Yeah. 타마마의 땐디 현도 마동 왔던 바시자 친이데 삼만불려 먹지 된저위 땜바테 아니 현도 마동와 아니 가서 땜바시자 세가다 라신지 마주발라 아니 레단데 남샤 탐제 타바 땜바기 아니 땜바시자 친이데
So then back in the praise of dependent origination, seeing that the teacher has taught this kind of explanation, this form of dependent origination, and that the teacher is the Buddha is unique in being the teacher that has taught this dependent origination. Then who is sensible would not have faith in this teacher.
Oh yeah, that much more. She saw a Sunday, Dini Sura Chembonana, Shidu Mango, Star, or Kiwi, then they get all at 10, Ranshinji Maduba, Tanlabe, and Sura Chembonana, Chindo Maware. That digging to the Dryatella, and it does not dig it to the Gala. 라신지 마제바다 마제바 찍도 손에 지난 거 오타자 마제바 동게 라신지 여바당 때때네 여바 가서 여바 라신지 여바당 여바 찍도 손에 연나 라신지 여거와 라신지 메나 아니야 메거와 오텐데 누구여와 인장 라신지 마제와라 마제와 인 메거바 아니 좀 된다게 또랑 또 태랑이랑 그 공바 아니 랑가시베 도에 가서 또 강바탕 강바 미와티 테니 제외라시 여마인 세대게 과로 말에 강시 제라 제와 테메 테라 제외라시 여마인 세다다레 테라 제외라시 여마인 세대게 친한 거 채나 제와 마가파 와 마제바 마덴바 마제바 마덴바 랑게 좀 된데 랑게 아니 관시 송바인 말에 어디서 거야? 태양 깜바 담배 마지 시위 되니 깜바 니에 오니지 겨면 시세배. 마지 겨면 시간에 겨원 고발라 오니지 겨면서 마도 유견라 겨와데 때겨마 때내 겨면 봐서 가고 말했어. 대라가 아니 오니지 겨면 봐서배 겨와 가발라 가자 쳐봐자고래. 지리 겨와서 가봐 마인바. 랑신이 겨밤 오니지 겨밤 랑그 천이 유튜브 겨와 가봐래. 그봐 대겨봐 임바데 아니 가서 좀 아니 가대다 대서 다 랑시도 눈대다도 되고 랑시 눈대 지고래. 네 최담자 랑신이 마게발라 공원에 최담자 마게와 시송바인 마지 있어야 돼. 랑신이 마지와라 권에 가짜를 전담 그 잡아 잔니스 아니 코란랑이 아마 마지에 숨바데라 광시샤네 마지에 숨바데 랑신이 마지와라 권에 내 참제 깨와 매바 마지와고 시 순서.
So then the way to understand the meaning of this verse cited from this sutra, first one has to recognize that what's happening here is that the Buddha is differentiating between the negation of intrinsic arising, something arising by means of its own intrinsic nature, and a thing arising. Things arise, but they don't arise by means of their intrinsic nature. So one has to differentiate arising by intrinsic nature and simple arising. These two have to be distinguished. Similarly, in the case of existence and non-existence, and similarly in the case of non-existence, something not existing by means of intrinsic nature, or one could say not existing by means of its intrinsic identity, or one could say not existing autonomously. Any of these, they don't exist in that way, but it's not the case that they are absolutely non-existent. So one has to distinguish again between absolute, a categorical negation of existence, saying that things are completely non-existent. That's a misconception. Versus things not existing by means of their own intrinsic nature, which is what is being presented here. So in this context, then, one has to apply the qualification of intrinsic existence to arising, and this is explained in the text here, where the meaning of the sutra which has been cited is unpacked, is explained. So with respect to that, where the first line of the verse, which says that whatever arises from conditions is unarisen, where it says unarisen there, one has to understand the meaning of what is said, what the meaning of when the Buddha said these things are unarisen. And in the second line of the verse, where it says those things that have arisen, those things that have arisen from conditions are unarisen, they don't have any arising by means of intrinsic nature. The line itself, the second line there says, they don't have, it doesn't have any arising by intrinsic existence. Then one can see from this that the unarisen, which is stated in the first line, has the meaning of not arising by intrinsic nature. It's clearly stated in that second line. Therefore, what's happening there is that in the negation of arising, there's a qualification applied to the object of negation here. The object of negation, the object of negation here is arising by intrinsic nature. and that by intrinsic nature is a qualification, that which qualifies the object of negation here. So this is same thing is stated in the Lankavatara Sutra, which is cited in Chandrakirti's Clear Words text and his commentary. So in that as well, it says that the Buddha in the entering into Lanka Sutra says. Thinking about not arising, things not having arisen by intrinsic nature, I have said that all phenomena are unarisen. So that clearly demonstrates out of that from the sutra itself, the Lankavatara Sutra, that the Buddha himself explicitly said that when he said all phenomena are unarisen, he explicitly says that I had the intention of not having arisen by intrinsic nature.
Oh yeah. 라시지 마지와라 거는 최단자 마지보고写순서写와 안다가 책사도 참바 내장 켜바를 맞아와시 다 장신당 전담바다 랑기 천이라 소와기 아니 켜바를 맞아와 그게 아니 깨와 매숨바 좀 된데 깨와 매숨바 남 아니 깨와 매바 숨바 깨와 강인 탐지하라 아니 매발 숨네 좀 된데 좀 깨와 매바 숨바 된단 그 잡아자와다 마셔봐 깨와 매발 숨 돈에 아니 넘버 니지 아니 도디 공발랑데스 네 아니 도이 내가서 깨와 매바 숨바테 아니 때내 깨와 매바 깨와 말이 대화를 송구에서나 랑신지 깨와 매바라 권에 송구이래 제위 아니 또 도디 공발랑데 랑신지 깨와 매바 그 텐도 셰도.
So then, as said, this passage from this line from the introduction to, or the entrance into Lankavatara Sutra, is cited from, as it's cited in Chandrakirti's Clear Words, and so from that citation also, we can see that. Even that the problem arises here is that in the sutras, it's often said that all phenomena are unarisen. All phenomena are unarisen, and there are many statements of this without applying the qualification by intrinsic nature. That is, that things are unarisen, things have not arisen by intrinsic nature. So the Buddha, but in this passage from the entering into Lanka Sutra, the Buddha, the teacher himself, out of concern that when he had taught that things are unarisen, where he had taught that on multiple occasions without applying the qualification, that people might misapprehend this as meaning that he was stating that things don't possess any kind of arising at all. That they might misconstrue his statement that things are unarisen, all phenomena are unarisen, as meaning that they don't arise in any way whatsoever. So out of that concern, then the teacher himself, the Buddha, has taken up the intention of the sutras and explained that unarisen there means being without any kind of arising by means of intrinsic nature. Here, the qualification intrinsic nature could also be in the sense of not having, they haven't arisen by means of intrinsic identity, or they haven't arisen autonomously. That sort of that qualification can be understood in any of those ways.
어찌당 아니 좀 전에 도이 가서 가사라 전동기 잡아다 아니 맞아 가서 다 전동기 잡아 옹어서 잡아다 자장 무슨 맞아봐다. 아니 맞아봐. 텐데기 아니 잡아지야 와래. 그러나 아니 베나시라니 못다 오이나 부모가 대달라라 시지 또 만나 봐 양다 봤다고 세가라 탄주와 제가라 아니 뒤에 가서 가자래 개방 무슨 자디 아니 원심하게 아니 수메드라메 틈을 로메라자 메세가라 라싱시아게 개방 무슨 책 무슨 매나양 아니 매바잠 메줘봐 아니 라시지 또 맞자고 해.
So then, in general, one could say that in the sutras, there are so many different statements of the Buddha, where cases where he has, there are cases where he has not stated this qualification of this of ultimacy. He has not. There are cases where he has not stated that things have not arisen, have not arisen ultimately. This sort of qualification, or then there are other occasions in which he explicitly stated that things have not ultimately arisen, applying this qualification of ultimately, or by means of intrinsic nature, or by means of intrinsic identity, or autonomously. These sort of qualifications of ultimacy are not applied to. There are times when they are explicitly applied to the thing which is to be negated, or that sort of qualification of the negation is made. Then there are times when it's not made, that sort of qualification is not expressed at all. Then there are times when it's there, but it's not directly stated, it's not explicitly stated. So, for example, in the Heart Sutra, which we quote, which we recite every morning, when it says that someone should see that the 5 aggregates are empty of intrinsic existence, they should correctly see that the aggregates are empty of intrinsic existence. In that Heart Sutra, then, in that line, according to the Prasangika school at least, the qualification of the object of negation is explicitly made, in that the aggregates are said to be explicitly said to be empty of intrinsic existence. So in that case, it's explicitly made. But in the other cases where it simply says there's no physical form, there's no sensations, there's no eye, no ear, no nose, etc., then those negations don't have that qualification explicitly stated when they're presented.
Oh yeah, that's it. 관계 깨려 줘봐 되면 걔네 깨려 자 깨려라래 간데 동시 숨 세대 감바 숨바티라 걔네 감바 숨배 아니 규제 현라라래요 레신 규제 현라 되와데 아니 원이 좀 라시지 주에 동비텐도 숨배니 아니 동 숨배니 라시지 주에 동바 denjung ten yinji rashi chue tongba rashi chue tongba yinzang ane denjung ten yinji jezam jewazam gaba ki ten chebe tongba ane di temba mari rawa jezam gabi ten chebe tongba mimba dendo.
So then the third line, which says that whatever depends upon conditions is said to be empty, or whatever is contingent upon conditions is empty. And that third line explains that things which depend upon conditions, or which are contingent upon conditions, are when it says that they are empty of being established by intrinsic identity, intrinsic existence. This statement there, which the statement that that which is dependent or contingent upon conditions has the sense of it being empty of being established by its intrinsic nature. That has what that says is that being empty of being established by intrinsic nature means that they're dependently originated, but it doesn't mean that it's not a simple negation, a negation of arising as such, which would entail that things are empty of being able to function.
Oh, menjan tayo tam chi tenji chwa chwa inare o da tenji tenji jewa kha chwa de imbate teni ani ra shala ra mala beki o ni shiwa shala ra mala be o ni shiwa shala ra mala be o ni meba she ani tenjung gu junzenji tenji imbi junzenji ani o ni ji chwa xiom o ni ji chwa tongba o only to be Shivam Tomba Sumbe.
So then this same idea is expressed in the basic wisdom of Arya Nagarjuna, where it says, and these two lines from the basic wisdom text have the same sense as the sutra passage that was cited previously from the Sagaramati, the questions of Sagaramati Sutra. And here in the basic wisdom it says that whatever exists, whatever exists or arises dependently, that is you could say peaceful, is peaceful by nature, or one could read this as being one could also say la ngoniki shiwa. So one could say then that whatever exists dependently or whatever arises dependently, that is without any intrinsic existence, is pacified of it is hard to translate this. Ngoniki shiwa. Ngoniki tongba. It's empty. The meaning is that it's empty of intrinsic existence, or it's devoid of intrinsic existence. So this means that the commentary explains there that by means of the reason that of arising dependently, and the reason arising dependently here again can refer to both forms of dependent origination. The dependent origination, which refers to causality, that things arise, things that are produced, created, arise from causes and conditions, or the dependent origination in the sense of mutual dependence. Either of those are applicable here. This reason of dependent origination shows that things are peaceful or are empty of being established by means of their own intrinsic nature, their own intrinsic identity, or some kind of autonomy.
Oh yeah. Oh, you just true. Shiva Tomba Sumbe. Umawa Luji, 때내 개원이지 마지 些마와 차거서 셰소지 때내 개원이지 같이 깨라 개와 태마지 세대 때내 개와데 마지와 些마와 차거서 셰소지 민주 강建容啊 마와 대다 장의 사와인我대다 그 아니 저바데 사와데 까밤 사와레 저 개와다 마지라시 마제와다 라시지 마제베 쳐봐 마제봐 그게 같이 깨라 깨봐 태마지 그래 때내 깨와니 좀 마제 세대 아니 과소래 때내 깨와니 좀 마제와 마제시 마와 차고서写소지 민주 강화로와 마와 아니 가서 대다장의 사와인 대다 까밤 사바이 라시 개와도 마제와다 라시는 마제베 켜바쳐라
Didn't kill Nikki, sewing.
사와 까
Sewing, Gakbayin. Didn't kill Nikki. Right. Oh.
때내 개와니 좀 마제 마와 차고서写소기 아니 민주지 강화로와 마와데 아니 가소래 까밤 사와레
Didn't kill Nikki. Gakba.
까바 사와스나 까바
So then, because this is taught in this way, that if something, by reason of dependent origination, that things are empty of being established by means of intrinsic nature, because it's taught in this way, then one should understand that that in the Madhyamaka system, that by means the fact that things arise, they're very arising independently, enables one to eliminate or to negate statements, all of these different kinds of statements that people make, such as that one has to say that things are unarisen. You find people saying that in the Madhyamaka system, one has to say that things are unarisen, but they're doing when they're saying that things are unarisen, they're not making the proper qualification of the sense of unarisen by qualifying it with this this specification that things are unarisen by means of intrinsic nature. Rather, they're saying their idea is that things are not arisen in any way whatsoever, that they're absolutely unarisen, and that sort of nonsense, which says, which is sort of saying that whatever one says is okay. All of these are cleared away, or eliminated, or negated by this reason of that things do arise dependently.
Oh yeah, that take that sumba. Tenjungi tenzila, tangan tenzila. 당연 말려봐 제주도 아바 세다다 주시와나신 저와 말려 제부고 세가 다 저와 말려 제주도 아바 테라 텐더비 땡중기 땡지라 신동 아디 아바 제 땡중기 땡지 그연데 당 아바 신동 아디 마주비 시와래 개베 땡중 채나 또 줄테 개회 아니 땡중기 채남 아니 규전을 때내 줘봐면 뒤로든지 땡중기 채나 또 줄테 땡지 또왜 다 땡내 중앙 뒤로든지 땡지 또왜 아니 타다 와라 땡바 용 미치 타다 시와니 라시지 여바다위 따와진바 그라 아니 타다 라시지 여바 주베 따와텔라 땡바 용 미치바 지 땡중 치신도 또왜 세가라 아니 편준 뒤로든지 아니 아니 땡지 또왜 아니 탄생게 따와라 미담바 숨비튼 다 탄생게 따와 라시 여바쯤 비쯤 받더라 미담바 숨바
So then, using this sort of reasoning of dependent origination is highly praised. And for example, it says in the sutra, which was requested by Anavatapta, that there's a quotation here which says that the wise, a person who is wise or intelligent, by having understood that. By means of dependent origination, having understood phenomena by means of dependent origination. Here, dependent origination again indicating the either the causal form of it, that things that arise, that are produced, are effects, that they arise from causes and conditions, independence upon those causes and conditions, or likewise the mutual dependency or contingency of things which rely upon each other. Or one could say also in terms of the relationship between something being designated and its basis of designation, that sort of dependency. The dependent origination in those senses enables one to understand phenomena, and when one understands phenomena as said, as being empty of intrinsic existence, then the wise person does not tartawala. Then they don't base themselves upon or rely upon the extreme views. Extreme view here is referring especially to the wrong view which holds things to be established by intrinsic existence or intrinsic identity or autonomy in that way.
Oh yeah.
So, just as with just by understanding dependent origination, by means as it is, dependent origination as properly understanding it, then one doesn't rely upon the extreme, the view which misapprehends things as existing in some extreme way.
Yeah, that's oh yeah. Oh, yeah.